So apparently I'm live here. Awesome. Nice to see everybody. I am talking today about a topic I think of great interest, certainly to a lot of people. And let me just get this. I thought this was aligned a little bit better. Hold on a second. Let's go this way. Okay, good stuff. So we're going to talk today about a topic which I think a lot of experts, a lot of leaders struggle with, which is holding on to the fact that the old way is not working, and how do we create a new way forward? How do we allow ourselves the space to make different decisions? How do we allow ourselves the ability to think differently, act differently, not just sort of following the old way because it's the comfortable way, it's the way that I used to know, and as a result of that, being very comfortable in saying, I'm good with a new way forward. And so, sometimes what has to happen is that by letting go, you create space, and in that space, you have the ability to think differently. Now, when I work with leaders, one of the things that I notice oftentimes, right, it doesn't always happen, but it oftentimes happens that they don't necessarily have clear boundaries. So they don't clearly know what do they need to be focusing on, what are the right things for them. And what starts to happen as a result of that is that they become unfocused. They carry old commitments because they used to be useful, but those commitments aren't really useful anymore. Projects that once looked like opportunities, relationships that were relevant and useful once upon a time when we were in a different phase and stage of our lives. Habits, here's an important one. Here's, I think, a really big one. Habits that used to serve us in the past, but don't serve us anymore. They hold us back. Or honestly, maybe they never served us, but we held on to them anyway because they were just habits. They were things that somehow we developed. And we thought that they were being useful, and we never really thought about them. We never really gave meaningful consideration about what they actually do or do not provide. And so as a result of that, we solidified those habits. We went deeper with those habits, but we never actually what's what I'm looking for, challenged those habits. We never challenged our assumptions. So whether it's old commitments, old relationships, old projects, or embedded habits, any of which or all of which are no longer serving us. This discussion, the purpose of this live session, is to give us space to think about how can we make that change? How can we do things differently so that ultimately we are in a better place? Now, I just want to see over here that everything is recording. Okay, super. Sometimes you go ahead and you have all this conversation, you realize you didn't have anything recorded for those who want to listen to it later. Okay, either way. So the trap is as follows. When we talk about letting go, right? It's a nice thing to say. It's easy to say, oh yeah, I'm going to let it go now. I'm going to be a different person. But practically, there's action involved in this, right? And on top of it, it requires something that maybe a lot of us don't realize, and that's permission. In fact, I literally just got off of a coaching call. Let's see if I can reposition this a little bit better here. I literally just got off a coaching call a few minutes ago. And the person that I've been working with, he's an executive in a nonprofit doing great work. But one of the issues that we keep coming up against is giving himself permission to ask questions, giving himself permission to be more assertive, giving himself permission to take initiative in places where perhaps in the past he has felt a little bit more constrained. So giving ourselves permission is an important piece. And in our case, for our purposes, we want to have permission to say things like, this is no longer serving me, right? The leader that I'm becoming isn't going to thrive with the behaviors and the relationships and the actions of the old leader that I was, right? And that's something that's really interesting because oftentimes we think of leadership as ready-made, maybe not ready-made, but as a final product. We think of leadership as somebody who's achieved a particular outcome and now they're there. They've reached that milestone, they got that title, and so they've arrived. The reality is we never arrive. Right? I know that I had better moments and lesser moments when I was in an actual leadership position. Now I support leaders, and the leaders that I support, um, the leaders that I support are evolving, and I know I was evolving in my time there, and then even since, I've given many hours of time to reflect upon what I did well, what I didn't do well, how I can support others. My book, Becoming the New Boss, was written specifically because I wanted to help new leaders in particular, although all leaders benefit, but specifically new leaders to hit the ground running and to enjoy sustained success. But no matter how successful you are initially, or even over time, there's always room for improvement. So to say things like, this is no longer mine to carry, I'm not going to carry this relationship anymore, this responsibility anymore, I'm going to shift it because it really isn't the very best thing for me. That's just one example. Or this doesn't serve the leader that I'm becoming. Sorry, I'm just adjusting some things over here. Or I can choose clarity over clutter, right? That's just another way of thinking about it. And all of these are choices. All of these are forms of permission. All of these are statements that basically say, I'm not who I used to be, or I'm not going to settle for or tolerate the level that I once did because I want to be different. And the only way to be different is to grow. The only way to be different is to step out of the past and say, how can I adjust things, right? Is this serving me? Is it not serving me? Will I become better as a result of this, or will it hold me back? These kinds of questions are critical. So saying no, and by the way, here's another piece, especially for the people pleasers out there. A lot of people, including a bunch of my clients, they're really, really good people. And because they're so good, maybe I don't say it like that, maybe that's the wrong way of phrasing it, but because of their desire to give, because of their desire to help people improve their condition, they tend to be what we call people pleasers, which means that they want to say yes to everything. And we know that there are challenges with that. It doesn't allow you to get your work done. It also limits your ability to be most effective. Because if you're saying yes to so many things and you're diverting your attention in a variety of different places, you can't step up and into the role that you were meant to be occupying, right? A leader has to be able to be very focused, very disciplined, able to say no, so that you can say yes to the right things. And that deliberation, that deliberate intention around making choices, good choices, choices that will affect your productivity in a healthy and positive way, those don't make you bad. Those actually the opposite. That's what makes you special. It's what allows you to continue to be the leader that everybody needs for you to be. Okay, so with all of that said, let's dive into some of the other details here. Hang on a second. Okay, this has been a bit of a work in progress today, just getting things lined up the way that they need to be. All right, so with that said, let's keep going. Actually, see over here, do we have any comments so far? No, we don't. All right, so let's continue. All right. So let me give you a few examples of things that leaders often hold on to well past when they should. Let's say you have a standing meeting that no longer has a clear purpose. That's one example. I'll give you an example of what that looked like for me. So when I first arrived at the school, when I became head of school, so my predecessor had a standing meeting. I'll shift over here for a second. Had a standing meeting with, getting this lined up here. All right. Standing meeting with the middle school general studies faculty, a group of teachers, as well as administration. And there was a definite benefit in this meeting. They would go through the various students, since they all shared these students, and talk about what's working and what isn't and how can they help. Really good stuff. However, it was literally a weekly standing meeting. And as head of school, I didn't feel that this was the right place for me to be hanging out and to be spending my time. I had principals. We had the teachers. Honestly, in retrospect, there were some others that would have been better suited, the case manager, et cetera. But those people actually weren't there when I first started. I hired them and promoted them at a later point in time. But I knew this meeting was not a high value meeting for me personally to be involved with, because I wasn't going to be involved in those individual students' interventions for the most part. And so what the teachers needed to share, they could collaborate amongst themselves. They could share with the administrative team, other members of the administrative team, but I didn't need to be part of that. And so for me to say no to that, it turned out to be a very healthy and beneficial decision. Here's another example. A project that once felt exciting, but now pulls resources away from the bigger vision. I'm constantly initiating projects and killing projects. And the reason is because when things don't go well, sometimes I think I have a great idea and it seems like I've got the kind of support necessary to make it work. And for whatever the reason, it fails. For the reason it's not gaining traction. So you have to sometimes be willing to let those things go and say, this is ultimately not for me. This is not something that was worth the time and the energy that I invested in until now. It's pulling away resources, financial resources, time-related resources, visionary and mental resources. It's pulling you away from something bigger, or it's pulling you away from the next possibility, considering that this one just hasn't panned out. And then the third example would be a role or responsibility that you have outgrown, but you held on to out of habit. This is so big. I cannot emphasize this one enough. This is huge. What do I mean by this? So let's say, for example, and oftentimes Michael Gerber discusses this, right, in the E-Myth series, the idea of working on your business as opposed to working in your business. So often a leader gets promoted within their company, their organization, or maybe they get a new position elsewhere that is a promotion, like a linear move, but it's a move up as well. And so they now are being asked, let's say, for example, you're a salesperson, now you get promoted to the head of sales, or you're a leader and you become a school principal, or you're manager, mid-level manager, and you get promoted to the executive level. And so oftentimes what people will do is do the things that they used to do. It's comfortable. They're familiar with it. They got really good feedback about it the first time, which is why they were promoted in the first place. And so often we want to continue to do it. Maybe we just like it. Like I said, you're good at it. If you're good at something, you typically like to do that. Maybe you liked it so much that's how you became good at it, right? But either way, it's the connection to it that can be really, really difficult for people to let go, because we're so used to it and we want it and we feel we're good at it. And we forget that it's no longer the type of task or responsibility that we should be focused on. And that's a critical, it's almost like a maturity, being able to be mature enough to say to yourself, that's not me anymore. I'm no longer tasked for this. So let's talk about how we can kind of shift that a little bit. So if you hold on to these things, whether that's that role that you've outgrown, the project that once felt compelling, the weekly meeting that doesn't serve you anymore, when you hold on to these kinds of things, the longer, first of all, the harder they are to release, and the deeper they become habituated. So it is critical for you to go over to review your calendar, review your daily tasks, look at all the things that you're involved with, and ask yourself, is this the very best way for me to show up? Is this the kind of thing I need to be focusing on? If the answer is yes, great. But if the answer is no, then choose something different. Okay, let's take some practical takeaways before we wrap up this live session. Okay, so number one, if you want to free your focus, ask yourselves these three questions over here. Number one, what am I still saying yes to that no longer aligns? What are the things that are on my schedule that I've allowed to continue to be part of my schedule, part of my work day, etc., that no longer aligns with who I am and what my company, organization, or team needs from me? Number two, what fear or story is keeping me from letting it go? Maybe it's a story of, or fear of, being viewed as, somebody who's no longer interested, as a leader who doesn't care. Maybe there's a story in your mind of something you experienced where you felt that there was a disconnect between yourself and your superior, and you don't want to do the same thing for your people. Everyone's got a different version of that. But oftentimes it's a fear. Oftentimes it's a self-doubt. Oftentimes it's something that we've rehearsed in our own mind that's not allowing us to make that necessary change. And question number 3, if I released it, what space would it open up for me now for what truly matters? And this is a critical piece, right? I often talk about it with productivity. I often talk about it in the opposite way. So if I've got all these things, let's call it my plate, all these various responsibilities, all these things I have to do, and somebody asks me to add more. So I advise my clients to say, this is my plate. These are all the things I've been asked to do. If you ask me to do this, something's going to have to go off the plate because there just isn't enough room. What should I remove so that I can focus on this instead? So the opposite is also true. When I take things proactively off of my plate, because I know it's no longer serving me, or it's not in the best interests of me, my others, etc., that now creates space for me to focus on things that are actually the really valuable work. And as we've talked about already in different conversations, the real valuable work is in the non-urgent but important quadrant 2 box. If you think about the Eisenhower matrix, right? It's the visionary work, it's the strategy, it's the planning, it's the relationship building, it's the check-ins, all the things that you need as the leader to be doing, the nurturing of relationships, cultivating, sales possibilities, whatever those are, so that others can now step in and do the other work that's ultimately going to help you achieve that level of growth. So you're opening up space for all of that. So to close, you're not here to do everything. Let's remember that, right? You can't possibly do everything. It's just not your job. So the question becomes, what is your focus? And the answer is that you're here to do what matters most. You're here to do the most valuable tasks, what we call the MITs, the most important tasks, the big rocks, as Stephen Covey would refer to them. Less is often more, less in volume, less in busyness, but more in productivity, more in high value work. Think of the Pareto principle. Think of the 20% that produces that 80% result. That's really what we're after here. So when you remove something that no longer belongs, whether it's a task or it's a relationship or whatever it is that's holding you down or keeping you bottled up, now you're making room, you're creating space for the work and the relationships and the opportunities that will define your next level. So this week, as you get back to work, notice what it is that you're still carrying. Ask yourself, be deliberate, be intentional, and be ruthless. Ask yourself, what is it that deserves a place in my hands, my calendar, my mind that doesn't have space right now? And what could I be eliminating for my present workload and for my present mindset and bandwidth and energy in order to create that space? I would love to hear your thoughts. Please hit me up with the comments and certainly like this video, like this content. If you got value out of it, it would be an absolute pleasure to hear from you. And I want to thank you for giving me your attention. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your input. Let's continue to grow leaders and leadership together.